Hey everyone, welcome back to Deep History TV. Today, we're setting sail into one of the most dramatic and heartbreaking events in modern history, the Titanic disaster. But before we dive in, let's ask some questions. Why was Titanic called the unsinkable ship? What really happened during those chilling final hours in the freezing Atlantic? Could more lives have been saved if warnings had been taken seriously? And why, more than 100 years later, does this story still captivate millions around the world? Stick with me, because by the end of this journey, you'll not only know the timeline of the disaster, but also the untold stories of survival, sacrifice, and the lessons that shaped maritime history forever. In the early 1900s, ocean travel wasn't just transportation, it was a race for power and prestige. Rival companies competed to build the biggest, fastest, and most luxurious ships. Enter Titanic, constructed by Harland and Wolff in Belfast for the White Star Line. This ship was a floating palace, over 880 feet long, with a grand staircase, elegant dining rooms, Turkish baths, a squash court, and even a swimming pool. But here's the paradox. While Titanic was celebrated for luxury, safety took a back seat. Regulations only required lifeboats for about 1,000 people, even though Titanic carried over 2,200 souls. The designers didn't want lifeboats cluttering the decks. They believed the ship itself was lifeboat enough. So the question is, was Titanic doomed before it ever left the shipyard? On April 10, 1912, Titanic departed Southampton. Crowds lined the docks, waving and cheering as the ship set sail for New York. On board were people from every walk of life. First-class passengers like John Jacob Astor and Molly Brown, surrounded by luxury. Second-class passengers, professionals and scholars hoping for a comfortable journey. Third-class passengers, immigrants chasing dreams of a new life in America. The voyage was more than just travel. It was a microcosm of society, divided by wealth and class. The rich dined on fine china in elegant halls, while the poor ate simple meals in cramped quarters. But here's the mystery. How would these divisions later influence survival when disaster struck? The first few days were a dream. Passengers strolled the promenade, listened to the ship's orchestra, and marveled at the smoothness of the voyage. For many, Titanic wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of human achievement. Newspapers had called it unsinkable. A modern Noah's Arkansas confidence ran high, perhaps too high. Third-class passengers enjoyed a rare comfort compared to other liners: proper beds, dining halls, and even running water. It was modest but hopeful. For first class, it was unimaginable luxury: 10-course dinners, champagne, cigars, and conversations about wealth and politics. The question is, did this false sense of security lull everyone into believing nothing could go wrong? As Titanic crossed into iceberg territory, wireless operators received a series of warnings from nearby ships. The Californian reported heavy ice. The Mesaba warned of ice fields directly ahead. But many messages were missed or set aside. The wireless room was overloaded with passenger telegrams, messages of business, romance, and greetings back home. Captain Edward Smith, nearing retirement, pressed forward at nearly full speed. After all, arriving early in New York would be a triumph. So the haunting question remains: was it arrogance, negligence, or simply human error that allowed these warnings to be ignored? On the night of April 14th, the sea was eerily calm, the stars bright, the air bitterly cold. At 11:40 p.m., Lookout Frederick Fleet spotted something looming: an iceberg. "Iceberg, right ahead," he shouted. The crew tried to turn sharply, but Titanic's massive size made it slow to respond. The iceberg scraped along the starboard side, ripping open 5 compartments. At first, the damage seemed minor. There was no dramatic crash, just a shudder. Passengers in their cabins barely noticed. But below deck, water was rushing in faster than the pumps could handle. Titanic was mortally wounded. The question is, how could a single iceberg sink a ship hailed as invincible? Captain Smith and designer Thomas Andrews quickly realized the truth. Titanic had hours at best. But passengers were told only that it was a precaution to board lifeboats. At first, many resisted. Why leave a warm, glowing ship for a tiny, freezing boat? Lifeboats were lowered half empty. Some crewmen hesitated, unsure of the urgency. Meanwhile, third-class passengers were confused and delayed, some trapped by locked gates meant to separate classes. Time was slipping away. So, was the real tragedy not just the iceberg, but the failure to act with speed and fairness? Survival became a lottery of class and chance. First-class women and children boarded lifeboats quickly, but many in third class were left behind, struggling to even find their way to the boat deck. Statistics tell the story. Over 60% of first class survived, but only about 25% of third class. Entire families vanished. The haunting question: was Titanic a disaster of nature or a disaster of human inequality? Even in chaos, there was heroism. The ship's band played until the very end, calming terrified passengers with hymns. Engineers stayed below deck, keeping the lights and pumps running so others could escape. The unsinkable Molly Brown urged women to row lifeboats when crewmen faltered. Some families refused to part, choosing death together over survival apart. These moments reveal not just tragedy, but the strength of the human spirit. But here's the reflection: why do these acts of courage still resonate with us today? more than a century later. By 2 a.m., Titanic's bow was underwater, the stern rising high. Passengers clung to railings, praying, screaming, or leaping into the icy sea. At 2:20 a.m., the ship broke apart and slipped beneath the Atlantic. Over 1,500 lives were lost. Survivors in lifeboats listened helplessly to the cries of those freezing in the water. One survivor later said, "The sound of those cries is something I will never forget. It was the sound of death." How could a single night leave scars that lasted lifetimes? Around 4 a.m., the RMS Carpathia arrived, pulling 705 survivors from lifeboats. Exhausted, shivering, and traumatized, they watched as dawn broke over an empty sea. When news reached the world, shock turned to outrage. How could the unsinkable Titanic sink on its very first voyage? Newspapers demanded answers. The question is, did it take this catastrophe to finally expose the arrogance of the age? Both British and American inquiries began. Testimonies revealed shocking truths, ignored warnings, inadequate lifeboats, lack of emergency drills. The outcome, new laws. Every ship must carry enough lifeboats for all aboard. 24-hour radio watch became mandatory, and the International Ice Patrol was established to monitor dangerous waters. So we ask, did Titanic have to sink for the world to finally change? More than 100 years later, Titanic endures. Books, films, and expeditions to the wreck have kept its memory alive. Titanic is not just a shipwreck. It's a story of ambition, pride, error, courage, and loss. But here's the deeper reflection. Do we remember Titanic because of its disaster, or because it mirrors humanity itself in all its greatness and fragility? The Titanic was more than just a ship. It was a story of human dreams, pride, mistakes, and sacrifice. Its lessons echo across time. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to subscribe for more deep history stories. There's always another empire, another civilization, another mystery waiting to be uncovered.